It's a new week and a new episode, and this is brand new. And we've got the retired police officer turned writer Griffin Barber on with us this week. So coming up on Worlds Asunder.
I recommend it for anybody who has experiences that they want to try and work out, maybe talk to somebody without having to talk to somebody about it. If you can have two, so you can set up two characters who are discussing the very thing that you're kind of going through or something like what you're going through. And in that discussion, you can discover some things about your own mentality, your own resilience.
As storytellers, we want to capture the hearts, minds, and imaginations of our readers, mainly through our expertly crafted worlds.
Creating new worlds in any genre might seem like a daunting task, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel for every story.
Welcome, weary writers, to Worlds Asunder, a world-building and writer's life podcast.
My co-host is David Shadoin, better known as Shady. It's not just a descriptor, it's also his moniker.
And she's H.Y. Grigger, or you can call her Haley, your friendly post-apocalyptic wasteland elf.
Together, we've got enough published to fill a small shelf, but why should you listen to us? Because we called in some favors.
Every other week, we bring you the best and brightest to give you the tips and tricks on world building and character building like the pros. So, open up your ear holes.
Get out your pen and paper.
And get ready for us to tear Worlds Asunder. So this episode's a little dated, but please enjoy, please read the phone book part 1. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Worlds Asunder, the only podcast that's giving you world building and introducing you into the new year of 2025 with a man whose voice you could listen to all day reading the phone book. Speaking of, our guest today spent his youth in 4 different countries, learning 3 languages and burning all the bridges as he went. After retiring from a day job as a police officer in a major metropolitan department, he lived a stint in Northern Cali before moving to Tennessee. He lives the good life with his lovely wife, crazy smart daughter, and needy, if tiny, Bengal rescue. His first novel came in the Ring of Fire series, which he co-authored with Eric Flint. He produced another one in that same series, a couple of shorts. He's collaborated on a number of projects with many authors, including one Casey Azell, which includes one of my favorite novels, Second Chance Angel. He also penned Maneater and Infiltration novellas set in the Murphy's Lawless Annex of Dr. Charles E. Gannon's Kane Riordan universe. True to his eclectic background and tastes, he has written stories across the sci-fi and fantasy field, from hard sci-fi space opera, zombie fiction, and very dark fantasy. The new producer of the Baen Free Radio Hour, as well as a new editor at Baen. Welcome, everyone, Griffin Barber.
Thanks. It's funny how when you hear that read out, I should have read that to myself because there's a few things in there I would change at this point. just tweak a little bit of the language. Yeah.
That's fair. I was speaking of bios, I was just looking at mine because the new con season's coming around the corner, and I was like, there's a few things I should probably change out of there and sound like a professional instead of like an asshole. But
yeah, well, I always like to have a little bit of humor in it anyway. You know, it's you got to have some kind of fun in it.
For sure. Well, Griffin, it's I'm glad we finally got you on. I know I've been kind of angling for it, trying to find time, but I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to bring you on and just not have anything good to talk about. So I was doing a little homework too while we waited. But you are a retired police officer, and one of the things, but kind of before we get into the storytelling aspect of it, you talk about writing to stay sane. It was on your website. You were doing it while you were in the day job. So what kind of drove you towards writing as a police officer?
I recommend it for anybody who has experiences that they want to try and work out, maybe talk to somebody without having to talk to somebody about it. If you can have two, so you can set up two characters who are discussing the very thing that you're kind of going through or something like what you're going through. And in that discussion, you can discover some things about your own mentality, your own resilience, your own thought process on what is actually going on, as opposed to just kind of eating or drinking your way through it and not being able to process it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's definitely something. I think a lot of people maybe they don't realize they're doing it. But they, it's kind of like, to me, it sounded like you were doing journaling, but you're selling your journal ideas as fantasy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was an odd duck in the police department, right? Because I didn't have family that was cops. Nobody in my family ever, as far as I know, all the way back, was a police officer. Most of the people in my academy class had some kind of relation, somebody that was maybe in the department or a department somewhere. And they had known it was a field to get into, right? And I didn't have that, aside from my cousin-in-law, so my wife's cousin. Two of them became cops while I was there and looking at it. And I was thinking, well, that's a good way to go, earn a good living and not be necessarily a bartender or a waiter or something like that while I'm trying to get other stuff going, and to have good stories to tell and to kind of learn about myself and do a little good in the meantime, maybe. So, that can't be overstated. But one of the things that happens as a police officer, as a first responder generally, is most of us have experiences that are very difficult to process. And they can help you process if your department's on top of it or whatever, but they still aren't going to be there at 2 a.m. when you're wake up, cold sweat, thinking about it. So it was helpful to me. It remains helpful to me. When I get somebody cuts me off on the road, okay, I'll take a look at them, see if I can see what they look like so I can kill them in fiction. That kind of thing. So, part of it just goes with being a storyteller, right? You have one of my favorite pastimes ever. One of the favorite times I've ever spent is every single one of the there I was panels. I don't know how much I can curse on here, but no shit, there I was panels. Those are exceptional good times, because you get to hear other storytellers telling their stories in the way that they can and do is just amazing. And to hear it in their voices, especially some of the early ones that I did that I was really ecstatic to be on, with David Drake, telling stories and sitting next to John Ringo, and David Drake is telling us the story of where the cyan bolts in his Hammer Slammer series come from, why they're colored cyan and where that comes from. I mean, and just turning to John and I both going, oh my God, we were totally freaked out, fangirling the crap out of it at that moment, because it was just really neat. And it was an amazing story. And of course, told by an amazing storyteller. So yeah. Long way of saying, yes, I do have to process stuff through, or I like to process stuff through writing.
And that's a much healthier way to do it than maybe some of your compatriots. I know it's a much healthier way for the military profession, and some of my compatriots, how they process stuff. So it's, it's a good thing to have. But then, so that kind of leans into the question, then how did some of those experiences influence what you wrote, or, what you touched on when you wrote?
Well, I mean, one of the things that, again, I go back to David, one of the things they always said about him is that, he started out writing horror, but he never really quit, even though he's writing this military science fiction stuff that, on its surface, it's military science fiction. That's all it is. But really what it's talking about is the personal horror of some of the things you go through and how you survive personal horror and horror on a massive scale. when it comes to conflict and that kind of thing, and still do the job, still do the thing, the hard thing. So yeah, part of what had happened to me was that you end up having if you didn't already have gallows humor going for you when you got into a police department or first responder position, you're going to have one shortly, or you're going to quit. It's just that easy. I mean, it's literally, there's space on the spectrum for it, but almost every one of us has got some kind of weird, that was funny, and a story that is not funny to anybody else who's outside of the profession or is outside of that kind of dark humor mentality. But so to be able to tone it down or change the tone within your writing to make it more or less palatable or punch it up. Like, what if this would have gone sideways? The thing that makes me go sweaty, that is my memory. What if it actually went sideways and it went the way that I thought it was going to go? I was lucky enough. I never had to shoot at anybody, but I got in a lot of fights and there were several opportunities or occasions where I thought I was going to have to shoot somebody. So yeah, you can, I don't want to say play around with these things, but you can experiment with these things. It's a thought problem, right? It also, hopefully, if it's evocative enough, will it be an emotional issue as well, that you can actually work out some of the emotional detritus that's left after a critical event or something that's hard to deal with. So in world building, when you set up stuff that, is specific to your world, knowing where you're going to go and what you want to explore is a huge part of that, right? I feel anyway, but
you feel.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is kind of touchy feely. And it's one of the things also is you're talking about my compatriots and stuff, is that I was kind of an odd man out in my department. There's like, I think there's 4 guys that I know are big sci-fi nerds in the department. One comic guy, one guy that was like a huge nerd is like me as far as like science fiction books and gaming and stuff like that. And then there was one guy who's actually been very successful as a thriller writer, and one guy that left before I joined the department, he's the writer of Cars. So, I mean, a massive spectrum of writing, but that's one of the things you do also as a police officer is you exercise that writing bug a little bit too, because you have to write a narrative of the event. And when those events are really bad, you still have to write it. And one of the things I always got huge compliments on from the DAs who handled my cases was, this narrative is really good. Is this really? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the two things kind of informed each other, right? So you learn to set the scene, certainly, and make sure that everybody can see what it is that was going on from my perspective, because, I arrived on the scene. This is what I was told. And then to also, elicit and ask for those responses that you need in order to get a fuller picture of what happened in an interview, that kind of thing. So, what did he say and that kind of thing. So, yeah, both things reinforce themselves. And it's funny to me also that like Casey and a couple of others, they write these after action reports. And I'm like, yeah, that's a narrative of a police report. This is what I came, I saw, I did. This is how it made me feel generally. And this is what I'm hoping that'll happen in the future. But that's, it's a narrative. We're all constantly constructing our own narratives of what happened to us, what we're doing, et cetera. And the writing of it is never goes to waste, I don't think.
Yeah. And for those of you listening at home, whenever you see us talk about AARs, that's after action report, it's a military thing that we have to do post literally any major or sometimes minor event. And you're like, why am I doing this? I could just like tell you what we learned. But part of that is so kind of like what Griffin was talking about, where he has to hand it off to the DA or somebody else. It's a way for us to pass information to our command, to whoever. And then we just carry it over into our authorship. And so that's, if you've ever been curious about that and never figured that out, that's what that is. It's just us reporting on the events of our lives that we think matter to people.
Or at least to us.
Yeah.
And just to, I want to make sure that everybody's clear on this, that I am not, Haley and I are not enemies. I have not asked her to be quiet. She's feeling a little under the weather. I want to make sure that everybody knows that, because she's been very quiet. And I know that Haley is not the quietest person.
Yeah, I'm here. I guess this will be posted in just audio first, so people won't know that I'm lurking awkwardly and silently in the background.
I was gonna see how long you would go before you chimed in, and then
I did actually just check the clock. I was like, maybe I should say something.
It didn't help. It didn't help that I broke stride on the intro because I didn't say we're co-hosting. Which I guess I'm gonna do that for a year, and we'll see how that holds up. Since the first year I did that the whole time, the second year we're just not. There are easier ways
to fire me if that's how you're trying to. We're
just not going to say it. I wasn't trying to fire you. Let's be real. Everybody comes to watch this podcast because of you, not because of me. And then the guests we get because they're much cooler.
I don't think it's because of either.
Yeah, her office appears a lot cooler than yours. Just saying.
It is.
My office is about 6 feet below his.
Gotcha.
She got the cool office because I was real nice to the movers who had to deliver this particular desk, and I did not want to make them carry it down 2-3 flights of very narrow stairs.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was the big thing with the move to Chattanooga was the bookshelves behind me here.
Yeah. You even got the librarian's ladder going on too.
Yeah.
Our next move, we've got to get a bunch of bookshelves. It's on the list. We have a lot of reorganizing to do. So,
yeah, I'm embarrassed by how crooked some of those stuff is. It's messing with my very limited OCD.
I was thinking it looked great.
Yeah.
I think it's an awesome background. I'm real jealous. But what things about your life am I not jealous of? Anyway. No, that's fair. That's fair. I do have.
Yeah,
I do have real.
You do have your full head of hair, so just
real nice hair genetics.
Zip it, youngster.
So kind of one last question about a little bit about your past before we kind of jump forward, but the realistic experiences. We talked a little bit about of how that's influenced your decision to write, how you've kind of used some of it. But is there balance you have to have when it comes to writing realistic events, versus like what's going to, difference between, I guess, doing an autobiography, almost rewrite of the story versus what's going to sell in fiction, or do you care?
No, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. You have to care because the one thing you don't want to do in an action sequence is slow the action down. Yeah. That's death. It's death of interest for your reader. And so you have to pick and choose what it is you're going to put in, what details you want to use. This is one of the things I talk about when I do talk on panels about writing law enforcement, in your fiction. Is the biggest thing you want to do is pick and choose. And all you really don't need that much because the reader wants to feel smart. They want to feel like they connected the dots that other people didn't, or that they saw something or heard something or read something that other people aren't going to pick up on. And that's just a really good strategy. If you can ever do that, is pepper things in that, like I can't remember his name, but he was an Englishman that wrote a really cool, like Second London thing. And it starts out, the first half of the book is entirely, cop stuff. And I thought it was just, a really, really good, like wire level cop show, in my head. And then it goes, and the supernatural stuff starts happening and you're like, whoa, this is so cool. But I was like, so who did he talk to? And he's like, yeah, he just talked to a couple of, inspectors in the London Metropolitan and, kind of picked their brains and, he came up with, I mean, he had me fooled that I was like, this guy must be Leo, right? He's that good. And again, he just picked these really good, there's a scene in it where, the undercover detective is brought in and, they're talking in a bathroom and he's saying a bunch of stuff to him. And the undercover detective is a different ethnicity. And he challenges the supervising guy saying, hey, this isn't about me being, off the rails or whatever. This is about you and your racism towards my people. And I was like, oh, because HR exists everywhere, right? And it certainly exists in law enforcement where you have, especially in undercover work, where your optimal undercover person is going to be of the ethnicity, the religion, whatever it may be, of that group that you suppose is engaged in, especially organized crime. So, yeah, you have to pick and choose. You have to select the best, the most bang for the buck of those experiences or those things that will get you there and get the reader there specifically. One of the things I most like to do for myself is smell. Because not everybody's wrestled with a meth head. Not everybody's wrestled with a guy who's been on a 5-day coke bender, but most everybody has smelled some stank. Like they will know what stank is like. And so you can extrapolate from there and give that person that experience. And one of the things about close combat and physical, actual hands-on combat is you are going to smell that person. And you're going to get a really good, probably much better realization of what their diet is like and everything else, because scent is also one of the most massive pathways to memory. So if you're going to evoke some memories in a reader, include a scent. And I can't remember who it was, but one of the greats would go back after he finished the novel. He'd go back and through the manuscript and would insert every 5 pages. If he didn't have one already, he'd insert a scent. So,
yeah,
that sounds like a David Farland type tip. I don't know for sure.
I can't remember. I'm not sure who it was.
Yeah, that does sound like something that he would have said, though, from some of the courses I've taken from him.
This is I think it was like Zelazny era. So.
Yeah, and it's funny because it made me think of the fact that when we were doing like unarmed combat training, they were always like, you better freaking shower that morning because if you show up and you stink and somebody complains, kicking you out of the class until you shower.
Oh no! So what our guys did was go harder on you. You want to show up? You want to show up stanky? All right, fair. Stanky. We're going to team you up with other stanky who's actually good at this stuff, and see how you sink or swim.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, it's a quick way to learn.
Yeah. Well, and it presses the lesson home, right? And, because some people just want to get out of it, so they're going to go home. Whereas, no, you're going to get your face pressed in the mat or into somebody else's stank, and you're going to go, oh, maybe this is why I should have showered before I came in here.
I used to do jujitsu, and the worst would be the guys who would come in and do open gym before training, because they've already been working out for an hour or 2 hours. And that's one of the things that always gets me about even the novelizations of alien movies. All of the alien movies, you never get any idea what they smell like. You never have them stop and go, because what do the xenomorphs smell like? Right?
I assume putrid acid, but you're right.
Yeah, we're all just thinking now we don't want
would it be putrid acid or would it be mechanistic?
I don't know. Well, so it's weird because like, if you do it based on the first two movies, it has to be kind of mechanation, oil, like old oil or something like that, maybe fuel of some kind. But when you start getting into some of the later stuff, you know that they come from like different rank areas. I think the one thing, the reason I'm thinking of it was what was the What was the one Michael Fassbender was in? I'm trying to remember.
I try to forget.
Yeah, it was Prometheus.
Prometheus. That's the one I was trying to think of. Yeah, Prometheus, it's like this spore from some random planet, right? Is essentially what ends up becoming the xenomorphs.
And it's biomechanical is why because one of the coolest things I've ever done is go to the Geiger Museum, the artist who like invented the whole xenomorph, the visual aspect of it. And I mean, it to me, it's going to be biomechanical. So because it's got the saliva, it's got the biological aspect of it because it's breeding with using human intermediaries as the chrysalis or whatever, like a wasp. So I mean, it's fun though, but that's one of the things again. So your people are battling on an alien world. The alien world is going to smell different, right? Rotting vegetation may smell great there because of a different mixture of gases, right? Yeah. There's a bunch of different stuff that is like really, once you start thinking about it, it'll make your head explode because you can really have a lot of fun with it. My aliens are
evolutionary responses to things.
Exactly. Our aliens are really evil. They're so evil, but they smell like pumpkin spice. That makes them even more evil, right? Because they smell delectable.
That just makes them more huntable.
Right. But if they're like and again, so it's just so many different ways you can play with it. I mean, salt water is going to be salt water, right? But the trace elements that are in it that we can pick up on, and is so important for our mood. So many different things that go into actual physics of sense, how we feel things and how we process the world around us. You can go bonkers just playing with that stuff. And I haven't seen a ton of it done well. But one of the things is you get like, the Fae. Is the Fae glamour? Is that a spell or is that a scent? If you had your nose burned out, the senses of your nose burned out, would you be subject to the, you didn't have a sense of smell? Would you be susceptible to the Fae?
It's an olfactory aphrodisiac.
And glamour, like it gives you a whole different image of what they look like. So was the coronavirus an attempt to burn out everybody's nose and show them reality, right?
That's the story that should have been written right there. Is COVID-19 was actually a giant conspiracy theory to remove the glamour from all of the Fae in our world right now.
Yeah, and then you can do a full They Live. I don't know if you've watched that movie or not, but that is some great world building. It's amazing world building because it's so fast and so quick to turn around from this, world. Roddy Piper.
Yep.
So good.
Oh, rest in peace, Rowdy. But no, it is interesting though that you talk about like this is going in a completely different direction. That I completely. No, this is just commonplace at this point, right? We plan for one thing and then talk about something completely different for 70 minutes. But the smells piece of, so when I jumped into writing, the first short story I wrote was, I had to do it from an alien species perspective. And I don't think I gave a lot of smells in that one because I was having a hard enough time describing sight details without using human vernacular.
Yep.
Right. Being able to come up with words that would cross over enough without saying like, yeah, look like a bat. The fuck's a bat on that planet?
Right. Yeah, totally. No, and that's one of the biggest tripping points too. And aside from like, American vernacular being transposed back into the 13th century mouths. So, somebody saying okay in a medieval village. No. No.
Okay. What does that word mean?
Right. Exactly. Well, I do not understand what it is you mean. I don't understand. Je comprends pas.
I agree.
But yeah, so there's a lot of fun to be had, but it's also hard. But like I said, it can be really rewarding for your readers, and it can be really rewarding for you because somebody will come up to you and go, "Oh man, the way you described them and that smell, that just totally got to me." And you're like, "You get me."
One of my favorite compliments I've ever gotten from a reader was that a scene that I wrote made her nauseous.
Yep.
And it's not viscerally gross at all, but like the spookiness of it, she said made her nauseous. And I was like, thank you. I'm
Did
sorry.
you use was it just a page of moist?
No.
The moist ghost.
Moistened. It's
moistened the moist walls of the moistened cellar.
Right, exactly.
Now I have to put a trigger warning in front of that whole page for people who hate the word moist.
Yeah.
No, I will say I'm in the minority. I don't understand why people hate that word.
Yeah, I don't either. I've been like, and
I know it bugs people.
There's other words that are, it's almost the same. Joist. Nobody complains about joist.
No.
That's because nobody knows what a joist is.
Well, except for writers and carpenters, right?
Yeah. No,
it's amazing to me how many writers complain about that word.
Yeah. No, I've had a few friends who absolutely hate that word, and then so like every once in a while, then becomes the joke to just sneak it in somewhere. But you have to do it, and you have to do it so it doesn't entirely make sense that you used it. That way, they understand it's pointedly for them.
It's like looking at this, doing that.
It's exactly that.
Yeah. I just made the OK symbol for those of you that are listening.
Yeah. The OK symbol that was used as a game when I was in freaking high school, probably, and then became a whole cultural movement over the last 10 years. But
yep.
And I'm not trying to I don't think we're aiming to offend anybody with that, but I never understood where it came from or suddenly why it disappeared. But
it was just an annoying thing that teenagers were doing when I was growing up. So
right, and then every time you looked, you got punched in the shoulder, kind of
whacked several times in the shoulder. Yes.
Yeah.
This was not a game where I grew up.
Clearly.
Mm.
That's because you're so classy. You grew up in the classy.
Oh, I did not. The
classy hillbilly mountains of Conifer.
All right. Well, Peoria, Illinois had people, doing that all the time. So,
all right. The Midwest was almost the same all over. Didn't really matter. Well, there you have it. That's the end of Please Read the Phone Book Part 1 with Griffin Barber. He's had a lot of experiences, both cool and not so cool. And it's great that he's been willing to come on and talk to us. Expect a little bit more towards the world building side in the next 2 parts. And that's right, there are 2 more parts of Griffin. Also, big apologies. I think the last couple episodes didn't have the show notes in them, and that's my fault. There's some growing pains we've had to do since we've had to take over our own show. So if you see something, please say something, let us know, and we'll do our best to fix it. To find out more about our guests and ourselves, go check our show notes. Next week, really 2 weeks from now, will be Please Read the Phone Book Part 2. More of Griffin Barber coming at you fast. Make sure to go comment, like, subscribe, wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, thanks for helping us tear the worlds asunder. We'll see you next time.